Well, welcome back everybody to the Energy Update Weekly, and this is going to be our weekly update on the petroleum situation for the U.S. For the week ending July 22, 2022. So let's jump right to the screens, and let's start with oilprice.com. Look at the price of West Texas crude, which is, again, is the benchmark for the U.S. at $97.30 a barrel. Last week it was $97.37, so holding pretty steady. So if we come and look at the chart for WTI for the last month, it was up over 100 and now has come down through the month of July. So the price, for whatever the reasons are fluctuating, coming down a little bit. Up today though, about $2 a barrel. Okay, so number of rigs running in the U.S. right now is 758. You can see right here that's up 2 from last week, which was 756. And the frac spread, which are again the number of frac jobs that are completed, is up 11, and so they're completing wells, which is a good sign. Okay, jumping over to the EIA, the U.S. Energy Information Administration, which puts out statistics weekly on just about everything you could think of with energy, and we're looking at petroleum here. And so down the first line we're interested in is the crude oil in stock. This is millions of barrels of crude oil that are in stock. That means that it has been pumped out of the ground, is produced, and it's sitting on the surface somewhere, being stored and being processed and staged for the refining. So week ending 7/22, which was last Friday. That's the date. These values are always updated on Friday, or they end on the Friday of the week, and then they're posted the following Wednesday, which is today. So this was 422 million barrels of crude oil, and then you can see the other oils that are in stock. So 225 million barrels of gasoline for your car has been produced and is sitting in storage. About 112 million barrels of fuel oil is in stock. So you might look at these numbers and go, where are these huge 1.6 billion barrels, almost 1.7 billion barrels of oil? Where are these things stored? So let's just jump to another product over here. I've got Google Earth up right now, and this is the town of Cushing, Oklahoma. And the highway here going off to the east runs out and ends up in Tulsa, a little bit to the east. And this is one of the largest storage capacity. It's a hub of pipelines of crude oil being transported and moved across the U.S. and stored in these tank farms. And so you can see here, the north side of town, there are a tremendous number of tank farms. And we move down to the south, and there's even more down here. So these are very large tanks. So let's zoom in on some of these, and we can get a crude estimate of the size of these tanks by measuring across the top of this lid, trying to catch the center in there and come across. And this ends up being 292 feet, so it's probably about 300 feet in diameter. I don't know what the height of these are specifically, but these are large volume tanks that the crude oil is stored in and then pumped out and distributed to refineries and those types of things. So these tanks have floating lids. So these are pretty much full. This one here, you can see that there is a shadow on the inside. This shadow on the outside is from the tank height, but this one here and this one here, the lids are floated down on the oil. So this is partially evacuated of oil. This one is full. This one is full. These are full. And so the ones that have a crescent on the inside, which is a shadow of the outer casing, so to speak, indicates that the lids are that the tank is not full. And so you can see there's a wide variety of sizes here. It's been estimated, or not estimated, they know that their capacity here is roughly 77 million barrels of oil, that they can store at Cushing. Right now, they have a total of roughly 22 or 23 million barrels that are in storage, and that number has been dropping since the first of the year. Okay, so let's now jump to the weekly supply estimates and look at the crude oil production on you can see this is a weekly, and so this runs back for about the last 5 or 6 weeks. And you can see the week ending 7/22, the average domestic production was just over 12 million barrels a day, and has been pretty steady. Average over the last month and a half has been about 12 million barrels a day. Refinery input, so the amount of crude going into refineries, a little over 16 million barrels a day on the week ending 7/22. And if you look back at the past month and a half, that has been decreasing. So the high was about a month ago, almost 17 million barrels a day, and now it's down to 16. With a percent utilization of the refineries from 95% down to 92.2%. So finished motor gas, again, this is what you put in your car if you got a gas engine, about 9.7 million barrels a day of gasoline, and then Carojet, so the jet fuel, 1.7 million barrels, fuel oil, 5 million barrels. And this is both farm fuel and road fuel for diesel trucks. So, a lot of information on these sheets, but they're really fun to track through on a week-to-week basis. So, total crude oil and petroleum products, this is including the strategic petroleum reserves, about 1.7 billion barrels. So, total crude oil and petroleum products, excluding the strategic petroleum reserves, about 1.2 trillion barrels. About 900 million barrels of that is crude oil, and that includes the SPRs, which is roughly half of that value. Okay, so let's jump over to looking at production. We haven't looked at this form yet, but this is in 1,000 barrels per month. And it is total production in the U.S. on a monthly basis, and so this is a monthly value, and it goes back to November of 21, so the past 6 months, and you can see that for the most part pretty steady, a little decline here recently, but 353 million barrels a month back in November. That went up to a total of almost 360 million barrels for the month in December, and now we're down just below 350 million barrels a month. So that's total for the U.S. The rest of this chart is interesting because the country is broken down into what are referred to as PADs. So PAD 1, these are the states that produce into PAD 1. PAD 2 includes North Dakota, and so North Dakota, you can see that their monthly is pretty close to the initially to 34 million barrels a month, and now in April was down to about 27 million barrels a month. South Dakota, yes, we do have oil production in South Dakota hovering around 80,000 barrels a month, so not much. Okay, PAD 3 includes Texas and federal offshore. So Texas, roughly probably averaging the past 6 months about 150 million barrels a month, which is roughly 3 million barrels a day. North Dakota is about 1 million barrels a day, maybe a little less. Okay, PAD 4, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. Wyoming is the biggest producer out of that group, 7.3 million barrels a month. And then the PAD 5 includes Alaska and the North Slope. So about 13 million barrels a month coming out of the North Slope. And then, of course, that is tankered down into the U.S. Okay, so that's kind of the update for the week. One of the things I want to do weekly is look at a little shale play or an oil play, just to kind of give you some further information. And we're going to look at Wyoming today. Last week we looked at the Bakken up here in North Dakota. So in Wyoming, over here in the Powder River Basin, there is a shale play that is the Niobrara Mowry Formation, and so we can look at what the activity is in that part of the world. If you remember this from last week when we looked at Williston Basin, We're going to come in here and click Other, and then click off Williston, and Wyoming shows up on this map. And so Oklahoma, Texas, Wyoming, if you click on Wyoming, and this includes both the Powder River Basin area and western Wyoming. But in Wyoming right now, 17 rigs running, 75% are horizontal wells. There's a few vertical, and most of them, 82%, are for oil. And so not a big hub of drilling activity like some other areas that we will look at here in the near future. So this is a shale play, though, which means that these wells that have been going in recently are horizontal wells, which we explained last week. If you want to look more on how those horizontal wells work, you can go back and review the first issue of this Energy Update Weekly. So we're just going to look at one area. So this is the Wyoming Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and I'm going to look at basins by formation, and we're going to come in here and pick our basin, which is the where are we at? Powder River Basin, and it'll go to the Powder River Basin, and then these are all of the formations that produce in the Powder River Basin. And so we're going to come down to the Mowry, which is way down the list in the M's. Should be getting close. Here's the Mowry, and we want to look at the Mowry and look at the production values for the Mowry. And this table goes back to 1978, and of course back then the wells were vertical wells. And so let's go through this until the horizontal boom hit, which was in this area 2007-8. Now whether it reached there or not at that time, I don't know, but we can look at the numbers. So these columns by month, December, January, January, February, March, April, etc. through the year. So we'll just look at the first columns as indicators. So if we look at the total production in 2007 in the month of January, 1,950 barrels out of the Mowry. 2008 it was 2,500. 9 about the same, and then it started increasing. 3,500 barrels in 2010, about the same in 2011, almost 6,000 barrels in 2012, then up to about 64, and then here you can see where it really hit, a little over 20,000 barrels a month in 14, 22, 23. So it jumped good in 19 and 20, 90,000, about 91,000 barrels a month. And then so far in 2022, 197,000 barrels in January, and so January, February, March, April, May, June, and June's numbers probably are not complete yet, so this is probably a few days, but 155,000 barrels. So it went from again, if we go back to pre-horizontal, so 1,800, 1,900 barrels a month, and then the horizontal activity comes in, and we're up to 155, so and some thousand barrels a month. So the shale boom has really made a difference in the industry, and this is just an example from one formation from one basin. Okay, if any of the concepts in here or terms didn't make sense, go back and review that first video. I'll put on the end credits. There'll be the link on here that you can look that up and just kind of review and refresh yourself on that. So keep your tank full. Fill up when you're half full. It's better for your mileage if you fill up often and not wait for it to run dry. Don't run the nozzle at the gas station on full crank. Run it down at the lowest speed. It will not froth the gas and end up giving you less gas even though it meters as a full gallon. We'll keep looking at this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.